You could say that I am an idea guy. I got ideas, a lot of them. I get a new idea every day, and they're great ideas. They are world-changing ideas. I mean, if somebody would just ask me, I got ideas about how we could save the church. I got ideas about how we could save the country. I mean, I've got ideas even about how we could save the Detroit Tigers, right? I mean, I've got ideas. I got ideas for at least 20 books that need to be written. I got ideas for 50 movies that need to be made. I got ideas for at least 100 different inventions that would make all of our lives better. I've got lots and lots and lots of ideas, and they're awesome ideas. Don't believe me? Ask Bridget, because she gets to hear all of my ideas, usually around midnight, because that's when they come. Hey, baby, you awake? I got an idea. Hey, baby, you awake? I got an idea. Hey, baby, I got an idea. Why don't you shut up and go back to sleep? Ideas. I've got lots of them. Need an idea? I'm your idea guy. The problem is that most of my ideas stay ideas. Nothing becomes of them. They never get fleshed out. They never become real. And when ideas stay up here or just linger out there, then they just stay ideas. They never make a difference in the world. When it comes to things like God, like Jesus, like the church, like faith, like religion, it's really easy to get stuck in the realm of ideas. I got ideas about who God is and who God isn't. I got lots of ideas about how God's power works in the world and how it doesn't. I got ideas about what pleases God and what ticks God off. And we love to debate theological ideas, don't we? But the problem is, so much of our God ideas just stay ideas. They get stuck up here or get lost out there. And they never become real. And they never get any flesh on them. In fact, often we are convinced that the whole project of faith, of religion, is to really make sure that everybody has the right ideas. As long as we have the right ideas about God, as long as you have the right ideas about Jesus, the right ideas about creation, the right ideas on a whole host of social issues, as long as you have the right ideas about the church, about sin, about salvation, about heaven, about hell, as long as you have all the right ideas, as long as I believe in all the right ideas, then everything will be okay. And God will take care of me. The only problem with a faith based solely on the right ideas is life shows up and it messes up all our ideas. Suddenly, the unexpected death of a loved one. A marriage struggles or it crumbles. Struggles with infertility and having children. A diagnosis that comes and changes everything, a job loss. Our brothers and sisters in New Orleans today are experiencing a natural disaster. I can tell you the number of times that I've sat in my career where somebody walks into my office and says, Pastor Jeff, I just don't understand. I have believed all the right things. I believe in God. I've accepted Jesus as my personal Lord and Savior. I go to church. I say my prayers. You can go check the records. I tithe. How come it's not working out the way it was supposed to? Has God forsaken me? And often I have to sit there as all of a person's ideas about God simply start to fall apart. And I pray that we can sit there long enough in order to build them back up. That's why we need Christmas in July. That's why we need Christmas every month of the year, actually. Because Christmas isn't content to leave God in the realm of ideas. No, Christmas makes our faith real. It puts flesh on it. Today, we heard Michael read John's Christmas story to us. If we only had one gospel, if John was the only gospel we had, that would be our Christmas story. And notice what isn't in John's Christmas story. There's no baby Jesus. There's no angels. There's no wise men. There's no shepherd. There's no manger. If you take all of those things away, what's left? The Word. That's what John said. Take all that away and something is still there. And he said it was the Word, this thing, this idea, this sense that there is something weaving it all together, something that holds it all together. John said, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God in the beginning, and everything came into being through this Word. John 1 might be one of the most beautiful philosophical pieces of literature written in all human history. It's beautiful, it's epic, it's sweeping, and John lays it all out, strip it all away, and there's still this thing. He called it the Word. Strip it away, and there's still this idea. But then, Michael brought us right to it. Verse 14. Every time I hear it, and I'm so glad we're reading it other than in December, because I need to be reminded of it. Verse 14 comes along and it says that this Word became flesh and it dwelt among us. It made its home among us. This Word, this idea, took on flesh. The ideal becomes real. And it lives among us. There's a big difference between a faith built on ideas and one that becomes flesh. Do you want to know why I like ideas so much? Because they're pure. They're holy. They're lofty. They're not messy. They're objective. Do you know why flesh is harder than ideas? Because flesh is messy. It bleeds. It wrinkles. It ages. It changes. It sags. It gets saggy. Flesh, my ideas are perfect. Just ask Bridget, she'll tell you. My flesh, not so perfect. John says faith must become flesh, and it must live among us. You know, I used to have a whole lot of ideas about marriage. Then I got married. All the married people are like, I know exactly where this is going right now, right? I had all these ideas about marriage, and then I got married, and then it got real. Because Bridget Nelson was not interested in all my ideas about marriage. She is listening on a bus back from Kansas City right now, and she wouldn't conform to my ideas. She had ideas of her own. And our marriage had to come to a crossroad when we had to set down all of our ideals in order for it to be real. I had to learn to love who she was, not who I wanted her to be. It had to be real. And some days, the only way our marriage makes it is that we agree not to give up and to wait the next day to hang in there in the flesh. I used to have all these ideas about being a parent. I watched all of you screw up your kids, and I said to myself, just wait till I become a parent. I'm going to do it right. And then I became a parent, and it became real. I watched all of you who used to drive around in your cars with screens in your car so kids could watch movies on road trips, and I said, I will not be one of those parents. We did not have that when I was a kid. We didn't need it. And I'll never forget the first time we tried to drive from Michigan to Wisconsin with a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. We pulled off at the first Walmart and bought a DVD player and 18 DVDs. Because all of our ideas were matched by reality. Here's something you need to explain to me about parenting. Bridget and I are the same parents for 2 kids. The exact same mom, the exact same dad, 2 completely different children. How did that happen? I cannot parent Casey the same way I parent Sam. Who made that up? And all my ideas about how to parent one kid have got to change in order to parent the other kid, in order for them to be who they are in the flesh. And I got all these ideas. I have ideas about how long a teenage boy's hair should be. How's that going for me, right? And I could insist on that ideal. And I could miss the realness of who my oldest son is. To let him be who God has made him to be in the flesh. I had the same about ministry. I loved seminary. I mean, I loved it because we could just get lost in ideas. We studied theology and Christology and ecclesiology and eschatology and soteriology, and I think we even had some kinesiology in there. We loved our ologies. And I loved ologies. I wanted to stay in seminary. The last place I wanted to go was to the church because you people ruin all of the ologies. I wanted to stay in the seminary where it was pure. Then I got sent on my first internship. I was assigned to be an intern at the Methodist Church just up the road in Birmingham. My first week as a seminary intern, I found myself standing in a front yard next to my lead pastor. A phone call had come into the church. The mother inside was experiencing a mental break. She was inside with her 2 elementary-age kids. She was afraid. Others were afraid that she might hurt herself and those boys. My very first week, with all of my ideas about how God and church and faith should work, I stood on that front lawn as an ambulance and a police car showed up with their sirens, and as the husband drove speedily home from work. I stood there as they helped this mom make the decision to get in that ambulance. And then I sat in the back seat of that car as a seminary intern with all of my ologies, with one boy on the left of me and one boy on the right of me, scared out of their mind. And we drove them back to church. And the rest of the afternoon, I played video games. That next Sunday, I got up in front of that church for the first time as a young seminary. They robed me all up so I looked clean and professional, and I looked ideal. And I was scared, and I was trembling. And there in that third row, about where Richard is sitting now, that one little boy looked at me, and he gave me a thumbs up. And the Word became flesh, and it lived among us. And that's when I decided I'd become a pastor and not a theologian, because it was real. The Word becomes flesh, and it lives among us. The world is getting far and far less interested in the church as a debating society. They're less and less interested in our fights about our ideas. What they are looking for is a place and a people with flesh, who are a little messy, who bleed, who wrinkle, who change, who get saggy. Because that's right where God has always met us. So I'm asking us, are we willing to set down all of our ideas? Or at least are we willing to set down the idea that the person next to me has to have the same ideas that I do in order to make God's love real to real people in the midst of their real lives? Ask me what my idea of church is these days. It's a bologna sandwich. Given away to people who say, I don't care what your ideas are, I'm hungry. Will you give me something real to eat? So I invite you after the service to come down and join us in making it Christmas in July. Because the Word becomes, well, I have another slide. It just says the Word becomes flesh, and it dwells among us. You got some flesh. So God lives in you. You, we are the Christmas story. Merry Christmas in July.